looking at in holistic veterinary medicine, and how did that bring you to having what's called an integrative practice, which you're going to have to tell us is what that involves. But go ahead, tell me what started in the Holistic Student Association.
Yeah. So people always ask me, how I got interested in holistic stuff. And honestly, I just want to do everything I can to help my patients. And if there's more things I can do, I want to learn them and I want to do them. So yeah, I don't think of it as, and that's why I call it an integrative practice, because it's not just Chinese medicine. It's not just acupuncture. It's everything. It's everything we can possibly be doing to help them. And even starting in vet school, I was like, yeah, I want to learn all the things. I want to know all the things. I want all the holistic things. I want all the conventional things. I want all the things to help my patients. So yeah, and that's where I started. Yeah, I did a lot of my my acupuncture training. I actually started that when I was in vet school, and so yeah, that's all just part of how I practice medicine and how I am a vet.
Yeah, and you mentioned something very interesting about that. Acupuncture in veterinary medicine really became more widely accepted. I'd like to say probably somewhere around 30 years ago. I had some friends who were in vet school and had just gotten out of vet school, and they took advanced training in specifically acupuncture, because I'm here to tell you it was not in school. There was no acupuncture in school back then.
Really in school.
Yeah. And what I want to do during our conversation here today is I want to emphasize the fact that when we were in vet school, my peers, and that was in the 70s and 80s, we did not have the internet. I really want us to, I want everybody to think about this right now, because I'm going to really have, I'm going to have an explanation for why this is important as we go on. But first of all, one of the things that's so fantastic about veterinary medicine, I believe, is that it does keep an open eye towards other modalities for treatment. And so here we were, 30 years ago for me, where people were starting to do acupuncture for pets. And for you, you were actually in school and you had that exposure. Correct. Yes.
Yeah, well, it wasn't part of the regular curriculum. I had to seek those opportunities outside of it. But yes, I was able to do that in school. And yes, like it was, people talked about acupuncture. We knew that it existed. It wasn't something we had never heard of. So it was there. It's still not as mainstream as I think everyone would like. But yeah, at least there was acknowledgement of it as that it existed, and that there were vets, there were professors who did it at my school. So at least it was
we didn't have that at all. No professors did it, none. And so again, widely accepted. So this brings us to the fact that with holistic medicine, you had, again, your eyes opened with different types of treatments. And I'm with you on that. I think that I was one of the few veterinarians back, and again, this was in the 80s for me, where I had a house call practice, and that was my first business. I loved it so much, and I was out there using herbs, and it was just cutting edge. People get to have these herbal remedies off the shelf. I had to concoct things. I mean, none of this was available even on the human side, hardly at all. So this is, and I had the same approach. I wanted to do everything in my power. I didn't care how it was labeled. If it had a proven track record that it could help, I was absolutely 100% there, and I was going to do my best. So the thing, though, that is so different here between myself and your education wise, is that I'm looking at your resume, and you have class after class after class, courses that give you certification in these different types of modalities. And again, this was very rare. We had maybe a holistic animal track at AVMA conference. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it was there, or the holistic veterinary, and I was part of them for a while as well. Maybe we had a few speakers. Maybe we had the opportunity to get a handout about it, but there was absolutely nothing written. And again, there was no internet, none, zilch. We had to do research at the library and with a card catalog. And so there were a couple of books out at that time. I remember just the very first ones on like herbal medicine in animals. And that was a standalone book for many, many years. So one of the things that I noticed here is that you focus a lot in talking about food to clients. And I want us to stop for a minute and really let that sink in, because I had something really very disturbing happen earlier this week. I was on Facebook. I admit it. I was on Facebook and I was reading through one of the veterinary hospitals postings where they had said that that they had permission from one of their clients to post that their pet had had a problem due to pet food. And it was absolutely an issue that was documented. And there were, I've never seen a post blow up on a veterinary hospital Facebook page like this before. There were almost 300 people posting about how they said veterinarians only want money, they get kickbacks, they are bought and sold by the pet food companies, and on and on. And at one point, one of the veterinarians, she was really crushed and pretty much said, all we're trying to do is give you warning about a certain food, and you know, you're not letting us help. And it was at that point that I entered the conversation, and I privately messaged her and said, hey, hey, look, you're doing the right thing. You're on the front lines. You know, I'm with a body of veterinarians behind you, and we're trying to get the word out with a lot of research and support to back you up. So please keep doing what you're doing. Don't give up. And then I ended up engaging someone, and that's where they went into this whole thing about kickbacks. And I said, okay, if that is true, show your proof now. Anywhere, pull from the internet, anywhere other than gossip, where you can document absolutely that veterinarians have received some massive amounts of money to protect or certain types of food, and let's see that. And so obviously she couldn't find anything because that doesn't exist. And then I asked her a question, and this is very important. I asked her, why are you defending this corporate practice of this type of food? Why are you defending it? And wow, that rang true with a lot of people. At the end of the day, we have to stop for a minute and put this whole thing aside about which pet food's better, this and that, whatever. I did my research, which was on Facebook, and asked people, you know, what's the best puppy food? That's the extent of the research that they've done. And again, I'm not being, you know, disrespectful. I know that people are trying so hard. And in fact, hello, everyone. There's many of you that have listened to this podcast. Let me tell you that I respect, and I'm so grateful you're still listening to any veterinarian, let alone me. And here, Dr. Asia, who is going to tell you something about the fact that you were right, folks. You were right. Food is so important. Now, you knew this about yourselves. You've been looking at saying, what do I eat for myself? Now, one of the things that we went into here when Dr. Asia answered some of these questions I had was she talked about, wow, what is it about food? The food we feed our pets, how does it play a role in their well-being? How? Tell us.
Yeah. So, I mean, food, I mean, yeah, the reason everyone gets in such a to-do about food and, everything is because food is so important. It is kind of the most important thing that we can do. Because food, I
Yes,
mean, that's what goes into their body every day. That's the
every
tools
day.
their body has to work with. So if we're putting in tools that are contaminated, tools that are not nutritious, tools that are not bioavailable, tools that are inflammatory, we're making everything worse every
And
single time we feed them.
and food that is outright toxic.
Yes, yes,
Uh,
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
It's outright toxic. It's
yeah. If
not
we're
just
putting
about,
bad stuff in there, bad
yeah,
stuff is going to happen.
yeah, and this is what this is the whole point. Folks, you're 100% right. The way you love your pets and you're giving them food, you're researching and everything. Listen, you are absolutely on the right track. Now, what is so amazing here is that we're going to look at something very different. In the past, we were taught, my generation and before in vet school, that yes, there's prescription diets out there. And yes, we're going to treat, as an example, diabetes with this certain food. I want to tell you something, and this is what turned me around, folks. I haven't shared this with anyone, and that is I had my pets on certain prescription foods throughout their whole lives, and I've had 35 years of pets that I've been feeding certain foods for certain diseases, and I have not only seen them not respond, but I have also had pets that have been on supposedly a very good quality food, and they got sick with diseases that don't make sense, like hyperthyroidism, which did not exist in cats before 1975, when cats were started to be fed commercial cat food. Yes, we're letting this sink in. I was watching what happened with my pets, with my clients. They were coming to me, they were begging for help for their pets. I'm trying to do the right thing. And here we are, fast forward 30, 40 years later, I'm standing here and I'm telling you that I give credit to my clients. They were telling me things were not working. And I swear to God, I was listening to you, you guys. I was listening. The seed of doubt was planted. The seed of doubt was planted. Now, Dr. Asia, how can food be inflammatory? How are we seeing this? What is it about processed foods?
Yeah, so the processed foods, in the process of being processed, they produce a lot of compounds, methylation, a lot of things happen to the nutrients that are in them, and those become inflammatory. And yeah, that inflammation, that's making everything in the body inflamed. Inflammation everywhere causes more inflammation. And so many of our issues, allergies, GI issues, renal disease, arthritis, I mean, even cancer, those have inflammatory components. So inflammation contributes to them, inflammation exacerbates them, inflammation makes it harder for us to address them. So yeah, when we're putting really processed foods in, we're creating more inflammation. We're making it harder for the body. We're decreasing health and well-being.
Exactly. And we know that's true for ourselves. How many of us have looked more closely at our food and walked away from the prepared boxed foods and started to try to get toward as close to nature as possible? And I know people are trying to figure out how to do this for their pets, but they're stumbling and they're fumbling and they're following just some really far out ideas, when veterinarians are trying to remind them we need to make sure all the nutrients are there and that all the bases are covered. I got to tell you, the most important thing besides pet foods being processed is the fact that they come through what's called the animal feed supply chain. I worked for the USDA as a food safety inspection specialist, as a veterinarian on the line in slaughterhouses. And I'm here to tell you that I saw what was going to be the parts that went to pet food, I saw them go down the chute with tumors, abscesses, everything that was condemned went down the chute with the parts of the carcass that is not used for human consumption, because people in this country don't really like to eat cow liver or kidneys. So everything went down the chute. And I questioned this because I was also doing my master's in food safety with an emphasis on pet food. So I went to one of my mentors and I said, and she worked for a big commercial pet food company that I respected. And I said to her, could it be that when I watched the gullet, which is the neck of the cow and contains the thyroid gland, go down the chute for pet food, is there a chance that we actually are feeding cats thyroid hormone? Is that happening? I mean, I know that there's very reputable pet food companies, and I know you're getting your products from the animal feed supply chain. That's the cast off parts that I've just described. She says, well, no, that's not, but I'm going to talk to somebody and I'm going to ask him. And she came back with an answer and said, oh, they said there's a lot of good meat that's available around the gullet. That's the neck again. And you could just tease out that thyroid gland so you don't have to worry about it. And I thought to myself, oh no, there was nothing like that happening. Everything went on the processing line so fast. We had seconds to look for any contaminated parts like tumors or disease, parasites, and they're cutting the gullet out and they're shoving the whole thing. There was no teasing a thyroid gland out, none of it. It didn't happen. And I said to her, I don't really see that happening. And very shortly thereafter, she withdrew as my mentor. And at that time, I did not have the resources to do any pet food testing. I couldn't get any food laboratory to work with me because they were like, nope, we don't want to test any pet food and raise problems and this and that. And so years went by, few 6, 7 years, and I changed from wanting to do my project on feline hyperthyroidism because I just couldn't get the information together. And I just went towards educating people about pet food and where it came from on the animal feed supply chain. But I have good news. For the most part, the human food supply chain is very good because at the end of the day, all of us inspectors that were working there, we were trying very hard to make sure that humans were not getting poisoned, that they were not getting any contaminated product, that they were not going to be any tumors in their steak. So here we are, human food supply chain and the animal feed supply chain. So this is something where people are trying to create their own diets. What would you caution people about, not only as far as nutrients and balances, but also the origin of the food that they get for when they're going to feed? What is your concern about that?
Yeah, no, so I do recommend if people can do homemade, I mean, that's the best because then you can buy food from the grocery store and you know what it is. You know that when you buy beef, it's beef,
And it's not,
yes.
oh yeah. They just did, there was just a DNA sampling that was done.
Yeah.
Did you see
Yeah,
that came
30%
across
of
the
them aren't what
news?
they say they are.
Oh yeah. They've even found dog DNA in there. Oh yeah. I mean, that was animal feed supply chain, feed grade pet food.
Yeah.
From reputable companies. And they did DNA. I can do DNA testing at the labs I'm working with right now. Yeah. I can do all of that now.
Yeah. Because no, I mean, with commercial pet, you just don't know what's in it. You just have no idea. Absolutely no idea what's in it. No idea as far as contaminants, toxins, what meat it is, what minerals you just have no idea. None at all. Yeah.
And I had somebody say to me a very interesting thing. I was talking to a pet owner, and she said, well, I get my pet food from Australia. And I said, okay, well, why do you think that's any better? She says, because I never see them on recall. Okay, the recalls that are shown in this country are for foods produced in this country. You're not going to see pet food recalls for foods produced in Australia unless somehow you're watching global news. I'm serious. Listen, this is important, people. You're getting your food off of Amazon, what have you. I have no problem with that. You're trying. But understand this, just because you don't see that pet food recall show up, it doesn't mean that there hasn't been a recall. I did a big episode because I watch global pet food recalls. I actually report on them. That is part of what I do as pet food vet. And there was a fascinating recall. Of course, about 30 dogs died when it was found out that a slaughterhouse was dumping horse carcasses and at the rendering plant. I mean, animals were dumped over there with them. The horses were dead, and they brought the dead horses, the cattle, dead cattle went over with the byproducts at the renderer. The renderer was doing all of this, mixed them together, thought nobody's ever going to know. Nobody will ever know that we threw horses in there too. And what happened was the Australian veterinarians were very smart, because they went right to the origin and they discovered that that is exactly what happened. And DNA testing proved it. And it turned out those horses had died from eating a toxic plant. And those toxins were not destroyed by rendering. They're chemicals. It's like the euthanasia solution found in pet food. The chemicals are not destroyed. So here we have situations where it doesn't matter if it's from around the world. There's problems that are happening everywhere. So when you talk about making your own food, do you mean that people just go to the grocery store, they just purchase what they would be purchasing for themselves? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, so yes, as a starting point, but yes, it still needs to be complete and balanced for dogs and cats, because yes, they do have different requirements, calcium requirements, taurine, all of that stuff is different from us. So no, you can't just go and be like, oh, I'm having chicken tonight, you can have the same chicken tonight. No, it does need to be complete and balanced. I absolutely recommend that people use Balanceitcom. I think they're great. But yeah,
yes, in fact, Balanceitcom was one of the first to ever come up with the vitamin mineral supplement. Now, I'm not here doing an ad, and I know you're not too.
No,
but the point
either.
is, what we want to do, we want to say something super important, and please listen. When we say add vitamin mineral supplements, that does not mean take your one a day women's vitamin and throw that in there and crush it up. No, what we're saying is that it has to be added according to the correct nutrition. And Balance It was formulated by one of the first veterinary nutritionists to even write our veterinary nutrition textbooks. And he created this formula. I did call and talk to Balance It a couple of years ago because I wanted to find out the origin of their vitamin mineral supplement. Now, when I say that immediately you're thinking, what's happened routinely for the past few years? Have we seen excesses in pet food, which resulted in death?
Right.
And that was the vitamin D. I hunted down to find out how that happens. Some people think, oh, the vitamin D was just, too much was just put in by accident. It was faulty equipment. That's not what happened. The vitamin mineral supplement came from China, and it was a bulk supplement that was mixed in China and was sent out to a lot of the pet food manufacturers for them to use. Those who had their own processing facilities, as well as feed mills. One of the first ones we saw happen was about 2017. And everybody thought, okay, well, that's just a fluke. No, it was animal vitamin mineral supplement. However, when I talked to Dr. Delancey, I believe is his name, for Balance It, I found out that that formulation is formulated in the United States. And it's done to human specifications using human food supply chain. Again, those vitamin mineral supplements that are safe to be used for humans. And he makes sure that the Balance It addresses the correct formulation in recipes. And so that is an example of where you could find recipes to make. So is this a product that you've been able to successfully have people using for certain types of conditions?
Yeah. No, I have lots of people who are able to do homemade and to use the Balanceit.com for that, use the Balanceit supplement. Yeah, and that again, like that's the gold standard. Homemade food, balanced, complete nutrition. And yes, I absolutely tailor it to, the patient and, proteins and, all of that I tailor and everything. But yeah, it's actually not as intimidating. People are always like, oh my gosh, homemade food, it must be so. It's actually not that bad. With the Balanceit, it's you got your proteins, you got your carbs, you got some veggies, you got your supplement, you got some oil, and you can make up a big batch, and it's actually not that bad. So yeah, it's a great option for anyone who has the capacity to be able to do that. Because yeah, for sure what's in it. You bought the human ingredients. It's you for sure what's in it, and you made it, and it's it's going to have all the bioavailable nutrients, omega-3s, they're in there. You don't have to add them separately. They're just already in there because they haven't been processed and destroyed. All of the good stuff, all the bioflavonoids, they're already in there still. Yeah.
And what kind of success have you found by just approaching this from the feeding the pet correctly? What kind of successes can you tell us about?
Oh, it's amazing. Once and everyone is like, oh my gosh, he's doing so much better. And everyone is shocked, but then they're like, of course he is. Like, I don't know why I thought that feeding kibble was a great idea. Like, I don't know why I thought that. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's literally, night and day. Yeah, I mean, I have some patients where, yeah, very early on in my career when I was still like, I don't know how much this food makes a difference, let's try it. I had this patient who, older kitty, renal issues, all the typical older kitty stuff. He looked pretty awful. He was that skinny thing where cats, they lose all their muscle and they get skinny, and his coat didn't look great. It was kind of coppery instead of black, and he wasn't grooming it that well. And there's big giant flakes and dandruff. But he was still, a happy kitty and everything. But I was like, how about we stop doing this prescription kibble that he's been on forever, and let's do real food. Yeah, and 8 weeks later, he was a normal cat again.
Wow.
Muscle was back. He was sleek. He was beautiful. Yeah, no, and he still had all of those medical issues. He still had all of those things, but he just looked so much better. He felt so much better. He was playing again. Yeah, and he did great for years. And that was all we did was change his diet, get off the process and onto real food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not just a matter again with cats of opening up a can of tuna and saying, okay, we're good to go.
Yes.
It really has to be done with an eye towards balanced nutrition. And I did see again here in your extensive list of all the certifications you had, I was so delighted to see that you had been involved with the nutrition course, because again, I'm going to make excuses for my generation, folks. I'm going to tell you, we had one semester of nutrition, and it was large and small animal. And all we did was calculations about the kilocalories for the weight of the animal. And pretty much that was it. That was all. And we relied on commercial pet foods to get us by. We believed in them. In this case, though, this is an example of what's happening now with veterinarians. Please, folks, think about this. This generation of veterinarians, they have the internet. They could take classes more easily. They can get more certifications. They don't have to go to the big veterinary conventions, which frankly cost hundreds of dollars. And let me tell you, when you go and work in a clinic and they go like, oh, we're going to pay your continuing education. And it actually is, oh, we're going to give you $300 towards your continuing education. Hey, that doesn't even pay the hotel room. Okay. We can't afford it when we're young, trying to get out and pay student loans or what have you. The bottom line is this: there's the internet. We could take courses now. And this is what's happening. You've got to listen, give this generation of veterinarians a chance. Now, one of the things that you had mentioned, Asia, was something just remarkable. You know, I asked you, what opened up your eyes? Why did you start to think food could be an issue?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a critical thinker. I like to understand the why behind stuff. I don't, if someone says this is the way we've always done it, like, okay, well, why? Is this the best way to do it? Maybe there are better ways. So yeah, no, and you know, I spend a lot of time in the literature. I spend a lot of time looking at scientific articles. I look at human literature. I spend a lot of time looking at stuff, and I want to understand the physiologic mechanisms. Like, why is this working? Why do we expect this to work? If there isn't a physiologic mechanism, then I'm like, well, why are we doing it then? Are we just being superstitious pigeons? Because a lot of what we do in everything, in life, in medicine, and human medicine, and veterinary medicine, we do it because that's the way we've always done it, you know? Yeah, and I'm not gonna stick with that. I wanna make sure we're doing it because it's actually doing something. It's actually helpful. So yeah, when you start to dig into a lot of it, it just doesn't make sense. You know, why are we feeding cats kibble? that just doesn't make physiologic sense.
Oh,
you know?
yeah. And let's stop and take a moment here, because you said something else that was so important. Now, mind you, again, folks, I've been saying, oh, we got the internet now. What does that mean? Okay. When Asia says she's reading the literature, okay, during veterinary school, which is when you have what is equivalent to a PhD, you learn how to do research. And true research means that you're reading peer-reviewed medical journals. And she talks about the human and the animal ones. I did the same thing for myself. I had a medical condition going on. I ended up doing a deep dive into medical journals that were human medical, and I could read them, I could follow them, I knew what I was doing. And I was talking with my fellow veterinarians about my human medical condition. And we were all discussing, you know, a treatment plan for me, because that's how veterinary medicine is. So you were able to take this because you had already had exposure from, dare I say, the Chinese medicine, which again was based on human medicine. Mm-hmm. And I actually did interview one of my colleagues who, again, was older and probably one of the first acupuncture veterinarians in the United States. She says, yep, we just went to the chart. We did the correlations of the arms of the human is the front legs of the dog. And we just went down there and we like, that's our points we're going for. And so the applications did work. Let's just put it that way. But your research, how do you get to those medical journals? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I use Google Scholar primarily because I don't have to pay. There's not paywalls. I mean, PubMed is great, but a lot of times you run into those paywalls. Yeah, and I'm not going to spend $20, you know, on every single.
PubMed.
I mean, yeah, you know?
PubMed.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, so I mean, I love Google Scholar. It's super easy. Scholar.google.com. Everyone can use it. Yeah, and you know, the real scientific journal articles are there. Yeah, and there's just so much good information. Yeah, human stuff, animal stuff. Yeah, and you know, it's not just US based. There's articles from Europe, from South America, you know, all of that is there. And it's available to the public, and you know, you can read it and see what is happening.
Right. And you know what? I believe in people. I do. I believe pet lovers will take the time. They're educating themselves when they have medical issues. I find out from my human medical colleagues that they often have people come in and they're very smart. They've gotten into medical journals and done research about their own conditions. And the same thing here for pets. You can access these medical journals, and we will be happy to discuss these with you.
Yeah.
I would welcome someone pointing that out to me, because what if you found an article that I didn't see that was particularly helpful and was actually not not a data manipulation, which sadly was something that I'd seen the other day, and in that some folks had done again a Google search, just Google in general, come up with an article that said, oh yeah, this proves my point that pets can eat this particular commercial food. And I looked at the article and I said, this is not even from a peer-reviewed journal. It was named something that sounded like that.
Oh yeah.
And I said, this clearly states, when you look in the front of the journal, it says clearly this is not a peer-reviewed journal. What does peer-reviewed mean? Why is it important?
Yeah, so peer-reviewed means that other scientists, veterinarians, medical doctors have looked at this and they're like, yes, this seems like a reasonable design for a study. It seems like this was an appropriate number of, people, humans, whatever for this study. It was designed well. It looks like the data was, analyzed properly.
Valid and handled properly, right?
Yeah, and it was analyzed correctly. This was the correct test to be using to look for statistical significance. These conclusions make sense, because sometimes you read it and in the abstract it says the conclusion is this, and then you read the paper and you're like, wait, that that doesn't.
And that's pretty much what happened
here.
to me. I read the paper and I was like, wait a minute, and I read it again, and well, wait a minute, this doesn't match what this abstract is saying, and the data is gobbledygook, and wait, what? And I went to the front of the journal. I'm like, oh, for gosh sakes. So I posted that and I said, this is not a valid peer-reviewed journal article. And what happens is that, and again, this happens with people too. I'm not going to get into all the stuff that marketing does in terms of tricking us.
Right.
But you can find information out there that will trick you, even if you're smart. And on first blush, it looks like it's valid information, but this wasn't. And I pointed that out. And I said, look, you have to understand, if you're going to do research, you have to do it properly. And nobody's asking anyone to go out and do a master's project or get your PhD or DVM. We're just saying, look, if you think you found an article that you think is useful and valid, and you have questions about it, sure, bring it to our attention. And we are, as veterinarians, even the veterinarians who are older and have been locked into certain thoughts, we are willing to address things. And there's times, that's true, when maybe an office call might not be the most appropriate way to do it. But if you send it by email, give us a chance to look it over, then there's a real good possibility we can have a great conversation with you about it. But understand this, at the end of the day, we as veterinarians are so committed to doing the best that we can. And sometimes, I'll be honest, we get fooled. And if you believe you're pointing something out to us, we have to take it graciously. And we have to say to ourselves, okay, let's look at this with a critical eye. And at this point, we have situations where, again, the internet is helpful for us as well. And as I said, veterinarians like Asia they're getting out there. They're not even saying, oh, I have to go to a convention, I have to wait for a convention. They're going on there, they're finding the different types of certifications that they could get. And I noticed that you had done one that had to do specifically with nutrition. And I want to stop for a minute and talk about the difference between nutrition and food safety. So tell us what you learned in your nutrition course.
Yeah, so it was actually a traditional Chinese veterinary medicine nutrition course. So basically, so in Chinese veterinary medicine, food is recognized as one of the most important parts of health. It is part of treatment. It is part of prevention of disease. It's, so there's acupuncture, there's food therapy, there's Tuina, so like massage, body work, and then there's Qigong. Like that's medicine. Those are the treatments that exist.
All right,
So
I did a
food
little
is,
Qigong last week.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, food is absolutely
Makes you feel
recognized
all
as,
sparkly inside. It's pretty,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty
So
cool.
yeah. Yeah. So it was, yeah, centered around traditional Chinese veterinary medicine and, energetics of food, but also it was a course on, creating diets and nutrition and, balancing diets and, just looking at all of that kind of stuff as well. So, yeah, but yeah, also through the lens of, those same concepts from acupuncture and stuff about balance and, energetics and all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm ready to take that class myself now.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
It's
I
online.
did. And then I looked at the price and I was like, oh gosh, I got to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. I actually did look at your entire
Yeah, no,
resume
you would
and
love
I
it.
was looking
Yeah.
at things and I went online and I was, oh my gosh, I could take this. It's kind of starting. Oh, darn it. I don't have that much money right now, but yeah. So I will someday because I think that
Yeah.
it's fantastic. It can only help me become better. But I mentioned that there is a difference. And I want to say this is so important because you're coming at this from the point of a nutritionist, a veterinary nutritionist, and you're looking at balanced nutrients as well as an eye towards origin of the foods themselves. And you are advising that we stick with the food supply chain. And that is for use of in human food. Not the animal feed supply chain, again, the human food supply chain. And I myself am coming from the other side of the same coin, which is food. This time it's safety of the food. And I got my advanced degree, a master's in food safety. Now, the difference is I look at the contaminants, the toxins, I look at the pet food recalls and I determine how the heck did that happen? And then I share that information with people. So I am not looking so much at formulating diets. When people talk to me, they're talking to me because there is most likely a problem with contamination. When they're talking to you, it's a little bit of that, but it is mostly, let's see if we can balance things out for what's happening with the whole animal at this point in its life.
Yeah.
So there's certain nutrients you're going to say, let's do more of these type of nutrients. Mm-hmm. Yes. For me, I'm going to be, okay, what food, what treat? And then someone, after I say, what treat did you give? The third time I ask that, yes, I do grill people, yeah, they'll admit to me they did give a treat. And I'll say, oh my gosh, that treat was on recall last month. And they'll be like, but it was available in this pet store and I bought it. And I said, I'm so sorry. Someone was not being vigilant and you fed a treat and this most likely was the contaminant in it. And now we have to talk about whether that's life-threatening. And again, they'll be like, oh, this was something. Then the next thing is they've always eaten this and never been a problem.
Right. Right.
It's like, oh, please. How many of us have eaten bag salad and now we're looking up, yep, there's a lettuce recall again for E. coli. Okay, yeah, I ate lettuce off just fine all last year. But you know what? I am not going to eat lettuce now from that particular company. And maybe I'm just going to even grow my own. Okay. I mean, it's getting to that point, right? Am I right about lettuce? Come on, folks, right? Okay. So this is critical for people to understand that Asia can provide this service. Now, we all learned how to do that. I just finished telling you, we learned that in vet school. We learned how to develop nutritious diets, but she's taking it a step further, and she's helping to heal the pet with food. It's not just about keeping the disease from getting worse. It's even, let's see if we could take it further and help heal with food. This is remarkable. And then coming from my point of view, I'm telling you, whatever you do, folks, when you make that food, make sure you get your ingredients from your supermarket. Okay. Don't say, oh, I'm going to get it because this is a commercial raw food, let's say, and it's got to be fine because it's a raw food. So it means I could cook it and make it like this. Now, not necessarily. You got to check and see. There are some raw foods that are coming from the human supply chain for pets. There are some lightly cooked pet foods that are coming from the human food supply. Now more than ever, those are commercially available. So I can't even say commercial pet foods as a general, like, oh, all commercial pet foods are bad. I can't say that anymore. I have to be very careful and say, oh, this is human food supply chain. This is, and I actually have talked to a number of those companies and verified that they are sourcing their ingredients from restaurant supplies. And that's how they can get a good pricing on that. They didn't go to their supermarket because there's so much of a markup. They went to the restaurant supply chain, and that's where they source their food. So that's why they can make it affordable for us to buy. So do you find that that might be an alternative if someone can't make their own food, whether it be time is mostly the problem? Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, no, and so not everyone has the capacity for that for any number of reasons. I have a lot of clients who are vegan, and cooking, they just can't handle
Oh,
cooking.
sure.
Okay. They're okay feeding it to their pet, but cooking it is just, lots of reasons that people, don't have capacity to do homemade food. And sometimes, they can do homemade food sometimes, but other times, they're going out of town, they need something, that the pet sitter can do, that sort of stuff. So yes, I think that there are commercial options that are good. If they're sourcing from human sources, if it's, real food, so, fresh foods, raw foods. And I do usually have people cook raw foods because raw can be hard for a lot of them, but, real food, not processed, even the dehydrated foods, those are minimally processed. So yeah,
and
those
again,
can all be good options.
human supply chain, food supply chain, please folks, human food supply chain as the origin. Yeah. And you might have to call the company and ask them. Sometimes the people on the phone can't answer you. You got to have somebody call you back and tell you. Yeah. So that's fantastic to know. So you can say, all right, I can work with you. The bottom line is, she's saying, I can work with you and come up with a solution, because as I was reading on your wonderful website, the Sea to Sky Vet, I went on that website and I read through there, and she talks about how her goal is to work with the pet owners together. You're going to help the pet. It's not a matter of just saying, okay, here, this is a shot, here's a pill. It's like, no, we're going to sit down, we're going to spend time. That's how I used to run my house calls as well. I would put aside an entire hour. And the other thing was that you find in the environment sometimes clues. And I found I was a more successful diagnostician when I was a house call vet, because I didn't have to ask like so many questions about the environment like I would when I'm in a clinic, right?
Yeah.
So when you're standing there, sometimes you're like, oh, and they'll show you this, oh, okay, this could be an issue. So let's look at this a little more closely, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So was there ever a situation one time where you walked in and you went like, oh, okay, this is why there's an issue here, just because you had that extra clue?
I mean, all the time.
All the time. Okay.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, no, you just see so much of, and the animal is doing their normal behavior. They're not just, sitting there like scared.
Oh
You
gosh,
can't,
isn't that true? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And you're like, well, I don't know if he's uncomfortable because he won't move. But at home you can see like, oh, he's definitely limping, he's definitely lame. Like, oh, I just see when he tried to get up on the couch there, I see he wasn't using his right hind leg normally. You just see all that stuff because they're normal. They're not in a weird environment trying to pretend they're okay because it's scary.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
no,
And,
it's
and what
just
dog
yeah.
can walk normally on linoleum?
Yeah.
You're in the vet clinic and you're like, okay, let's go out to the hallway and watch him walk. Or I never
Yeah.
would do that. I'd be like, I'm going outside with you. We're going to go walk on the grass,
Yeah.
and so, but yeah. I mean, how it makes such a big difference
Yeah.
when you get to, well, gosh, good. That is fantastic. So can you tell us anything that you look back on here and you've been in practice for how long now with your house call practice?
Um, like 8 years.
8, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us anything notable when you look back that you're particularly excited to share, or, a challenging situation that had a really great outcome, something that you're looking at and you're thinking, wow, this is so meaningful for me to be there and to do this for a person and their pet
Oh, I mean, like every day.
every day.
Like
Oh my
literally
gosh.
every day. Yeah, no, I mean, so a lot of what I do is geriatric medicine. So a lot of older pets, that people are just, what else can we do? Because they're on pain meds and stuff, and it's not necessarily always that they're painful. A lot of times it's just, they just need some environmental modifications. They need some mats down. We're gonna work on their rehab, their muscle strength and stuff, and we're gonna work on nutrition so they're getting good nutrients. And a lot of it is just, that increased care, extra TLC and,
Well,
care
like,
and
and
everything.
that's so interesting because when you mention older pets, I have two little dogs that were 15 that passed away this year, but they were both having a lot of problems. Just the old age type thing, obviously, and they were losing weight. And I just made a real strong commitment to saying, okay, 100%, I'm going to make my own food and feed them. And wow, that alone made such a difference.
Yeah, no,
Um,
people every time people like
yeah,
about it, it's not immediate, it's not, 2 weeks, but it's about 3 months later that they're like, oh my gosh, he's doing so much better. Thank you for recommending real food.
yeah, the real food, that was exactly it. It ended up just being a real, um, I don't know how to say this. It was like they kind of got like a spark back. They weren't
Yeah.
just sleeping all the time. They weren't just like um, having difficulty. They'd go and they eat, and then they'd be like, oh, I'm going to drink a lot. Because I kind of suspect maybe their mouth hurt to some degree because, you get older, your jaws are going to, your bones hurt. Why not your jaw? And you're
Yeah.
crunching kibble. And
Yeah.
and again, this is as I was going through and finishing up my master's. And as I was getting all of my type of my information together and doing massive amounts of research from my project, there was more and more leading to it. I mean, I had to face the facts that uh, I had to make my own food, and this was challenging. Not finding the recipes or finding the food to make was not as much of an issue for me, but really it comes down to going to the grocery store and buying enough of regular food. Sometimes that's like, okay, I got to really make sure I I
Yeah.
suss this out right, and the more I read, one of the tricks and was, heck, you spend a few hours making food. Let's say you're making enough for a week or two, or
Yeah.
even 3. Portion it out and put those portions in the freezer
Yep.
so that you have a few days at a time.
Yep.
Now, I don't know, had you had anything happening where people were particularly challenged with food, like maybe it was in the fridge too long? Do you see sometimes, people might not be checking their food and perhaps watching the date on it? Are you seeing problems like that, or do you warn them ahead of time?
Yeah, no, not usually. Yeah, because I tell them, so yeah, you can go ahead and, you can do up a big batch. I usually just take it out a couple days before, so you can do a couple days worth per container if that's easier. But yeah, usually a couple days is what I tell them for like fridge time
Okay,
with the
so
frozen.
you're on the ball and you're telling them all of that, so you don't have any issues. Yeah, I was talking to one person who'd been very proud. I didn't have anything to do with her formulating a diet for her pet or what have you, but we were just talking in general. She's like, "Oh yeah, I feed my dog and I make up the food and all that." And I mentioned, well, make sure have it nutritionally balanced and I could check it for you. I actually
Yeah.
can do that now. I
Yeah.
have a laboratories that I work with and I can get the food over to them and they can check the formulation and make sure and give us the guaranteed analysis. And I don't know, it was probably like 3-4 months down the road. And then I heard from her, she's like, there's something wrong, my pet, she's vomiting and has diarrhea. And so I said, I remember you were feeding your own food. Um, she says, yeah, I just made up a batch and okay, like how long ago did you make that up? I says, oh yeah, it was made it up on last weekend. And it was like Saturday. And I said, are you still feeding out of that? And she's like, oh yeah. I went, okay, well, this is going to be the same idea as your leftovers. I remember the days of watching the Food Channel, and they'd have those things that they'd be like, okay, now we're going to do a bacterial count on leftovers that were in the refrigerator for more than 4 days. And so, yeah, hers was in about 6 days. Oh my goodness. Um, so just to remind everybody, treat the food like you do yours. And I love that you said something just so good right there. You go portion it out so it's like about 2 or 3 days at a time. That's it. Just make sure you defrost and have your portions set up so it's 2 or 3 days worth. And that's, see, that bingo. And I should have had that conversation with her from the very beginning when she was telling me she was feeding her own food that she was making. I was talking about nutrients and I just assumed that, but no, I should have covered those, but now I do.
Yeah.
Now I do.
Right.
I
That's
mean,
the
it's
thing, is that
part of
everyone
the
has
thing.
something to teach you. So
Yeah,
yeah, now you've learned that from that person, and from going on, you'll tell that to everyone. So
yeah. So that was awesome. I do have a question though. One of the things that was so challenging that I hear people tell about is that they'll be, okay, I have a big dog and I have to feed. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So what kind of support can you give people when they're, how's that conversation go when they have a dog that's maybe 50 pounds or more?
right. So yeah, but it turns out if you actually do the calculations out, eating homemade food is actually really cheap. And yeah, you can get it at the supermarket, but there's also, I actually recommend people go to the restaurant supply stores that are open to the public, like Cash and Carry, and I'm sure there's similar things elsewhere. Because yeah, you can get giant things of meat. You know, yeah,
Oh,
and it actually
okay.
is, yeah,
All
yeah,
right. I
Costco,
wasn't even aware. Oh, of course, Costco. Yeah.
Costco. But yeah, so there's actually restaurant supply stores that are open to the public. So normal people can go there, and it's giant amounts of it. But yeah, it's cheaper than the grocery store for sure. But yeah, no, even if you buy supermarket stuff, it actually is still pretty cheap. Because it's the meat is the expensive part, and then yeah, rice or whatever,
Yeah. And then
carb
you're
you're doing,
calculating
that's
out.
going to
And by the
be,
time, yeah, by the time you're finishing out the calculations, really, it's a matter of your time.
yeah,
So even
yeah,
though it might be about the same or perhaps even a little less than a big bag of what what people call the ultra premium.
right,
And oh yeah, that's another conversation. I think I
right,
already did that one. Oh,
right.
it's labeled
Yep.
ultra premium. I'm pretty sure I did an episode on that. And
Yeah.
here they're paying $5 a pound. I was kidding one day. I said, you're paying $5 a pound for kibble. I think all of you guys could eat sirloin for that,
Yeah.
including the dog.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The Balanceitcom, they'll actually show you how much it would be to feed this recipe per day. And it's, like $3 or something, like,
Mhm.
yeah. So yeah, but no, I do actually, I've had several people who bought chest freezers, yeah. Yeah, but again, yes, this stuff it's expensive, it takes more time, sure, all of that is true, but it's for your pet,
Well,
like.
and how about that other factor where ultimately it's decreasing certain types of diseases from even
Yeah,
occurring.
yeah,
And then you don't have the huge expense of where that takes you.
yeah. So
So
yeah, I mean, it's,
the prevention,
prevention. Yep,
yeah,
yep. Ounce of
yeah,
prevention. Yeah.
yeah, the prevention aspect is amazing. Before I forget, again, we've mentioned Balance It, and are there any other vitamin mineral supplements that you like to suggest besides that, or is that just the one you're most familiar with?
So I like the Balance It. I also, what I'll have people do sometimes if they don't want to use their vitamin mineral mix is I'll have them do Balance It, make up a recipe so that they know how much of the, different components to do and everything. And then we can do the vitamin minerals separately if they want to do that separately. So not use the Balance It mix. But then, yeah, we have the other stuff figured out. And Balance It will tell you, what things we need, and it's very, I mean, I
It's
can look at it
very
and go through
detailed.
all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of people get on there if I mention to them and they get quite confused, but as a
I have a
veterinarian,
handout on it because it is very confusing.
yeah, but as a veterinarian, I got on, I was playing around with making recipes and things, and I thought, for me, it made sense for me.
Yeah.
The other vitamin mineral supplement that I personally use, and again, I did verify with my conversations to that particular company, is called Just Food for Dogs. And their vitamin mineral supplements are set up for their recipes that are chicken or their beef. And so they have the actual vitamin mineral supplements and the amount you feed, and they have the entire recipe. And they even have what half that recipe is if you decide you want to make just half that amount. And it's all real easy to measure the I did confirm that the vitamin mineral supplement from Just Food for Dogs does get manufactured from the vitamin mineral company that is in Southern California, and it is used for humans, so it is a human vitamin mineral supplement company. And so it definitely is the human food supply chain. And they are all sourced in the United States. So there's none of that concern that has been happening with some of these other pet foods. So ultimately, that's what we were looking at at my house, and that what we've been using. And I do have a large dog. He is 95 pounds. Yeah, and I have 3 little dogs. So when I make my batches up, I have enough for 2 days.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I have a lot of meat in the freezer that I work off of.
Yep.
But I don't take any chances with making up, larger and trying to portion it out as much. I just go 2 days at a time. I'm comfortable with that. I am working from home, so I
Yeah.
have that latitude. But I'm with you, Asia. I completely see the benefit of making up batches, freezing, and then you just kind of go through that periodically of making up your food, maybe once a month even.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I have a lot of people, they use their Instant Pot, so they just do it on the
Oh
weekend, throw
yeah,
it all in the Instant Pot,
yeah,
then mix in the stuff and
yeah. And
portion it
you
out,
put
and
your
yeah.
vitamin minerals in at the end, and
Yep,
your
yep,
and the omega-3 fatty
yep.
acids. Yeah, and that's how we're conserving the nutrients under those circumstances. Well, I would love to have you come back again sometime down the road, and we could talk some more about different situations with feeding for healing. That's what I'm going to
Yeah.
call it, feeding for
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah.
You're welcome to
Yeah.
use that. I'm
Yeah.
100% supportive of you and your efforts. I am very delighted and excited to have met you, and I am even happier that you're right there in Western Washington with me. I want to say we're just a couple hours apart because I'm here on beautiful Whidbey Island. And perhaps we'll get to visit each other sometime.
Yeah.
So is there any parting words? Perhaps you could tell us about your house call practice and again, how people could reach you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been great. And yeah, likewise, I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to, now that I know that this is available, I think that I can definitely utilize it. I think my clients can definitely utilize your services. So yeah, I'm super excited about it and looking forward to sharing it. So yeah, no, my house call practice, Sea to Sky Holistic Vet. I take very limited clients. I'm pretty full, but yes, sometimes I can get people in. And yes, I do actually offer nutritional consults. You have to be in Washington State, but yeah, I can do those remotely. So you don't have to actually be in Seattle to access those.
See, that would be a great collaboration for us. You know, I could send people over for you to crunch numbers, and you could send pet food samples my way for me to process or to talk to you about the different possibilities where you think there might have been a contamination, and I can absolutely help you with that part. For the food safety.
No, I think it'll be great. So yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, my thing is, you know, actually I have on my website like 3 secrets for pet health, and they're feed real food, don't let your pet be fat, and just reduce stress. It's all just ways of reducing inflammation, helping the body be as normal as it can be. But real food is a central pillar of that. So yeah, that's if I had one thing I could share with all pet owners, please feed real food. It's the best thing you can do for your pet.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And please feel free to share this podcast, and it's going to be uploaded as a YouTube video as well. I'll send you the links, and in turn, I'm going to put all of your links into our show notes. And I encourage you folks, reach out to Dr. Asia and be sure to tell her you heard her on Pet Food Vet. Take care now. Bye.